Ladies and gentlemen, it was a long and arduous road, but we have finally made it to Rivals League playoffs, finals, or not finals, semifinals.
Finals?
Apologies. Give it a whole week. I'm just so excited, right? But of course, we have a week to look back on, which is why this show is called Rivals Runback. So we're going to be recapping the last week of regular season action. We'll be getting into the player rankings, team rankings. We got some fun stuff to share with you as well. So definitely gonna want to tune in, listen up, because blink and you'll miss it. As always, my name is Righteous. CB is joining with me. CB, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. It's the last, I guess, full-size Runback show as regular season is over. Next week will be a little bit different with the award show and whatnot. And then we'll go from here into a potentially 5-game series of semifinals.
Potentially. We will have to see. We don't have the standings to show for you because at this point, everybody should know what they shaped out to be. But for the playoffs' sake, Dignawash got the first seed, Roar got second, Shinobi got third, and the Patriots got fourth. And we are on to the player rankings, starting with top lane. Our boy Diet Coke ends the season at sixth.
Yeah, I assume somewhat naturally that 5th and 6th will probably be the majority of the two teams that unfortunately did not make playoffs. Yeah, Diet Coke had an okay 1 or 2 games in their series this last week, but gonna round out the 5th week in 6th.
Yeah, and I think, just being that supportive role, that, tank player for EV, it was always going to be kind of a uphill battle. He did well throughout the season neutralizing lanes, but wasn't really ever given the opportunity to be a top lane carry, which I don't think that was his play style anyways. So 6 is where he'll end up at 5th. Will be Andreas 417, another top laner that has departed from us. As Steel Teammate did not make the playoffs. I think Andreas, his biggest hangup, in my opinion, was just being over aggressive and overstaying in lanes. Just a lot of times he would get a win, carve out like a solo lead, and then just stay on the map too long and throw it back away. So I don't know. CB, any other insights for this particular player?
Didn't have a terrible last week. Obviously, it was kind of a interesting last week with some of the matches.
Yeah.
Subs and what games actually mattered and whatnot. But, 2 of the games looked pretty solid. He, missed the first 2 weeks of the split?
3, yeah.
Something like that. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd agree. Maybe a little bit too aggressive, but also when he came in, his team was 0-2 or 0-3. So, swing for the fences. Eventually, you're gonna hit one. So, some solid games, just a little too spicy.
A little too spicy. But yeah, I think, mechanically solid, has a pretty high ceiling moving forward. Just got to clean up that decision making. Jonakis is going to be a 4. So Roar had a weird week, and it was kind of hard to piece together who played where. But we decided to throw Jonakis in the top lane rankings because he played a mid lane Ornn, and he played top lane Jax, so made the most sense. Jonakis a 4 on the Ornn. Had an amazing farming simulator game because that was about as much fun as he could have with Doki actively sprinting down the game. And then in game 2, I think you got to see a little bit more about, his mechanical prowess. Actually looked pretty good on the Jax despite the loss. Was the only one that ended with a positive KD, 2-1-0.
Yeah,
So, he despite the 0-2 performance from his team, he actually looked pretty good.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see on Tuesday where Jonakis ends up playing in their semifinals match. If he ends up playing, who knows?
If he ends up playing,
they might know. They might not even know.
I don't know. I think they just kind of figure it out 5 minutes before, from what I can tell. But Jonakis a 4 at 3. It's gonna be alcoholic, which you'll have to fact check me, but I'm pretty sure this is the highest alcoholic's been. I don't know if it's tied for the highest. I don't think he's ever cracked top two, but regardless, their series against Aurora looked very, very good. 5-3-8 on the Mundo, and then went unkillable on the York. Um, it was just it was a weird series for everybody, but Alcoholic probably had one of his cleaner two games.
Yeah, it's tough to take too much from that last series between GCC and RAR, but Alcoholic I think has looked pretty solid most every week, and this week did really well, despite the kind of RAR not maybe trying their hardest to win, but no, good series, good split for Alcoholic, and we'll see if they can carry their team through playoffs. We'll see.
Yeah. Into the top two we go. At number two, it's going to be BK's. I believe he might have been number one a week ago, but I think a big part of that was that York performance kind of dipping him down, at least in my eyes. A pick that he looked very strong on previously, kind of just fell short. It wasn't just him. Pretty much the whole Patriots roster outside of their bot lane in that game two against EV was struggling, but had a really nice solid performance outside of that in the two games. It wasn't spectacular. It's not like he did any crazy plays or anything like that, but he had previously in the past. This series was kind of just play solid and then win team fights. So BK is a 2.
Yeah, I mean every week seems like he has a kind of a solo carry type performance. Didn't really have to do that this last week. And the series kind of went back and forth between games 1 and games 2, but solid week overall, enough to stick at top 2. I think he's been top 2 for a while. But that must mean that number 1 is going to be Storm from Dignawashed. I mean, he's been 1, 2, maybe hit 3 one week, but for the most part, it's been 1 or 2. All split. Don't think anyone's real too surprised about that. Kind of a weird week because they had a game that was kind of just practice type thing. Game 1 looked good.
Game 1 popped off.
Game 2, I think overall the team probably got a little relaxed, having some fun, and then they didn't expect to actually lose Game 2 to Nefarious Gaming, and then stepped it up Game 3. Game 3 I think was a little close, but no.
Game 3 was very close.
Storm had still had a solid performance, at least in the two game wins that they had.
Yep. Unfortunately for Storm, ends 0-2 on the Mbessa, which he told me would have been going undefeated. So, outside of that, I think Storm, either number 1 or 2 for top lane damage. He plays the sides very well. He shows up in team fights. He does his thing. Sometimes has questionable decision making, but makes up for it in the mid to late. So, there are your top lane rankings. Probably, are we doing one for players in playoffs? I don't remember what we said.
Like
Either
next
way.
week? Like next week?
Yeah.
I don't know.
This probably might be the last one.
Who knows? We'll see. Because next week we're gonna do the award show and whatnot, which is half community, half us. So we'll see.
All right, on to jungle power rankings. Starting off with number 6. It's Doki. You know what? In Doki's defense, game 2 was not his fault. I can honestly say. I think they had a little fun after losing game 1, picking the Lee Sin Tark in the bottom lane. But game 1 was a big part of the reason why they lost was Doki. So Doki,
I don't know. I'm pretty sure Shinobi was like taking the base while Doki was doing Gromp or something like that game 2. But yeah, I think they had definitely a for fun series maybe, just so they can actually play the match tonight. So yeah, it was a series to watch if y'all watched that matchup last week. But sitting at 6th, we'll see if Doki makes an appearance in semifinals.
We will see. Heard hearing some rumors, so we'll have to see ultimately who they suit up for. Pandorum at 5. Pandorum, kind of like Steel Teammate, just a split to forget. Um, you know, had some bright spots specifically on the Heck Room for Steel Teammate. They never picked up a win on it, but yeah, I think they had 2 games as Heck Room and popped off on both those games. So, um, some room for growth, some improvement. I do think Jungle is probably the better role for this player, but he ends up at 5, not last.
Yeah, not last. I mean, had one or I think 2 good games, right? Even the Scion popped off.
Yeah.
Spicy Scion jungle that we see every now and then. But yeah, a good week against the number 1 team, but still gonna be a 5th going into. Maybe we'll see. We'll see if we see Pandorum next split or not.
We will see. 4, Ribeye. Uh, EV had a fighting chance all the way up to the very bitter end for them, going the distance against Patriots, but ultimately ending up short. Game 1, uh, in their loss on the Ivern, I was surprised by the pick, but it actually looked okay. Um, Game 2 in their win against as Jarvan, a big part of the reason why they won was Ribey's attention to mid lane, making the Lord JK suffer in the lane into that Ari. And then game 3, just couldn't get it done with that Sidrawani. Ribeye, a player much like most of the players towards the bottom of this list that showed a lot of promise, but unfortunately for him and EV, just came up short.
Yeah, I think if 1 or 2 games throughout the split, go their way. Obviously, they probably creep into playoffs. I think Ribeye kind of bounced back and forth between the top half and bottom half of jungle, so kind of been in that middle tier, all split. So, can't feel too bad. I mean, 4th maybe seems low, but there's only 6 people, so
Yeah,
right in the middle.
I mean, it's solidly in the middle. Top 3 at 3. It's gonna be.
It's gonna be.
I'm Stealthy. Stealthy has been bouncing all over this list. Part of it being, jungle is kind of a team dependent role where you can look good as a jungler, but if your team's struggling, then it kind of nullifies it and everything like that. But in their series versus RAR, had 1 game, which was that volley bear, went 4-1-10 on it. I think he only backed like twice during that game. Had the fun Riftmaker build. Talroma, you can kind of put Talroma here if you want as a spiritual co-jungler. Also looked good on the Amumu, but I think if you were to combine all this player's exploits throughout the season and everything that they've done for this team, I think I'm Stealthy is a big reason why Shinobi is in playoffs when it comes to pathing, objective control, and the like. And so 3 is a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Only had the 1 game this week in what was a weird week, but yeah, I think one of the how well Stealthy does usually is how the team overall does, which I mean maybe that goes without saying in some instances for jungle in general, but Shinobi maybe more teams than others. As Stealthy sometimes fluctuates, but enough to make playoffs. So gonna end the regular season at 3rd.
Number 2, Patriots and Dignawash are the only teams remaining on this list, and it's going to be Eyesight at 2. Eyesight, like I said, that Patriots game 2 against EV wasn't his worst showing as a player. Went 3, 4, and 7 on the Skarner. Popped off on the Lilia despite the lack of kills, setting up intelligence for a lot of his success in the bottom lane. Eyesight, I mean, I played with him. Of course, he's your brother CB, so you know his play style. Is able to take the Lilias and the Graves of the world out of the champion pool, but I think he thrives when he's in a team fighting, playmaking position on the stuff like the Skarner, the Maokai, the Amumu. So the fact that he's playing those kinds of champs and is still at number 2 is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's interesting. it seems like he gets more kills while he's on the tank duty um,
Yeah.
than than some of these carry champs. So it'll be interesting to see what they pull out today. Obviously, we don't see the Digna-washed jungler yet, so a good matchup to watch tonight. But yeah, eyesight looked good this week. Obviously, they take the 2-1 victory just to barely creep into playoffs. I don't think he had to do as much this week against EV, but I don't know, it was enough to take that number 2 spot.
Number one, of course, as you alluded to, going to be Iplock of Dignawashed. And it's interesting. It's kind of two different playstyles you expect from junglers. Iplock, the more carry oriented, keeping up in farm, outputting a lot of damage, um, kind of a somewhat flashy player, while eyesight on these tanks. It's all about vision control, objective control, setting up his teammates. So it's interesting that they ended up at the top two with those, kind of completely opposite play styles. Iplock had a couple clutch steals against Steel Teammate, and he plays the flashy champions, and so I think deserving of number one.
Yeah, I think the objective steals is probably one of the reasons why Iplock is at one. I think he's been at one before.
Yeah,
And maybe almost got brought down to second because of that getting a little too spicy game 2 with that Z pick, right?
yeah. I
But
probably don't want
that's
to see the
okay.
Z
That's
again.
okay. We know it was a almost kind of a for fun type match, so we'll overlook it enough to still keep Iplock at 1.
Get a couple more roles to go. It's gonna be mid lane next. The man in the middle. We put Macho in middle. Had the Anivia game. And then also played bot lane as a Mel. So like two mages that you could find in the mid lane. So that's kind of where they slotted in. It was a rough series for Macho, 2-6-4 on the Mel, and then didn't really get to do a lot on the Anivia as it was so one-sided. Went 1-1 across that whole game. So Macho is a player that has played for RAR in the past, who has also, really popped off. I think a couple weeks ago, played a
Mm-hmm.
Mel and a Sivir in the bottom lane, and had a crazy KDA and was doing damage. So, kind of a blip for this player, ending up at 6, but it was the worst performance that we've seen for Macho, and it was the worst performance for any mid laner
Yeah,
this
it's
past
weird.
week.
Just because of kind of how RAR played the last series and whatnot, a lot of their players are, towards the bottom of the list, just because it was like a almost for fun type
Yeah.
match for them. So it's weird seeing them at the bottom as they are in playoffs. But yeah, I think Macho's ceiling is a lot higher than just being at 6th. Obviously, last week or the week before, looked really good at the AAP carry role. So
Yeah.
this week, just not really at that caliber. So you're going to be at 6th.
Which means somebody's going to be at 5, and that person is going to be the Lord JK. So the Lord JK came on to this Patriots squad later on in the season, I believe week 3. Week 3 or 4? Week 3, I
I think
believe.
week 3.
Um, and up until this last week, looked like one of the better mid laners. Had a very unfortunate showing on that Aphelios. Looked a little bit shaky outside of that game. Even
He
on,
played on the way. That's probably what you mean. But
or sorry, I meant Hue Aphelios. Same champ, basically. But no, the Hue went 1-8-2. Um, looked a little bit better, but also somewhat shaky in games 1 and 3. So, um, struggled for the first time that we've seen them. Means that they get put at 5.
yeah, I mean, I think game 1 was pretty solid. Game 2 was a very tough watch, I think. And
Yeah.
then game 3 was fine. So it wasn't like, 3 terrible games necessarily. Some
No.
other mid laners, jumped Lord JK for having a little bit better weeks. So I think it was just that game 2 that resulted in a loss looked pretty rough. So gonna be slotted in at 5 this week.
4.
Ooh.
Someone you don't know. Someone you don't know probably had the best 3-game series of his short time here at Rivals League against the number one seed. Um, you know, really popped off pretty much all the games. Game one, the Talia kind of didn't get to have a firm footing on that game as towards the mid lane, or sorry, towards the middle of that game, it kind of got away from Seal Team A. But in games 2 and 3 on the Annie, looked incredibly good, incredibly comfortable. And then even on the Corki, it was back and forth with Caden in that laning phase. And someone you don't know in Pandorum, kind of the two standouts in that game 3. The rest of their team did struggle. So really solid performance from this player. Going to end up at 4.
Yeah, I don't know if I ended up ranking this player at 3 or not. If I didn't, it was at least a toss-up back and forth because despite the loss and despite kind of going match winless throughout the split, yeah, looked really good this week. So especially against the number one team. So 4 feels good, especially when you didn't actually take any matches. So I mean, ending in your role at number 4, I think feels pretty good.
Probably the highest ranking a SEAL teammate player has ever held, outside of I think probably the preseason rankings for Andreas. Maybe we had him at 3, but the matchup that someone you don't know did go against was against Caden. Caden's a player that like it's hard to get a read on. I think on his comfortable champs looks really good. Every time he picks the Pantheon, it seems to do well for him. This is the first series, I believe, that we saw the Anivia, which is a favorite of his. Also looked really good. And then game 3 in the Oriana, that supportive role. Didn't have his best game, but hit a couple key ultimates, did a lot of damage. And Caden, for being a 4-point player, definitely you can feel his presence in a lot of the games he plays, especially on stuff like that Pantheon. Um, Gets a little bit shaky once he's outside of his pool. But for the most part, is able to pick champions he excels in. I'm curious to see if this series goes the distance, the full 5 games, what would ultimately happen. But when he gets his champs, he does well.
Yeah, I mean, kind of the silver lining of even though he is a lower point player, he has a very good supporting cast around him, on his team. So I don't think he usually pulls a ton of bans. So that might help his champ pool. But yeah, no, gonna end up at 3 for the regular season. I think the Pantheon game in game 1 is the reason that just above someone you don't know. But no, 3 feels fine.
Yeah, feels really good. You're with about the lowest points you can have in your top 3 in your position. That's really good. Millie Bobby Brown at 2, MBB. I wrote a little bit about it in Righteous Reflections. Shinobi kind of lives or dies by this player. If MBB is running down the game, Shinobi looks like one of the worst teams in Rivals League. But when MBB is online, when they're showing off the mechanics, making their presence felt, then all of a sudden Shinobi looks really scary. Champool, like Caden, kind of a question mark. Really likes those melee carries. I'm interested to see if we see some adaptation for best of 5. If we see some mages or some other ranged, potentially like 80 carries or something come out. But outside of that, this guy pops off a lot of games. Number 2 looks really good when he does it. Maybe too high because his lows are really low.
Yeah, but I mean, we gotta look at what actually happened. So
Yeah, that's true.
despite
That's true.
the weird kind of game between RAR, no, MBB looked really good. What Echo and Fizz? I don't think we
Yeah.
see too many Fizzes.
Fizz-eye.
But no, looked really good. Number 2, good spot to be in. Almost number 1. But number 1 is instead gonna be Soul Ram, who's not in playoffs.
Not in playoffs, but they went out on a high. Their game 1 on the Mel, I think Mel mid has kind of struggled since after the string of nerfs once she was released. But after that, 14-0-6 on the Ari, 4-1-2 on the Syndra. While MBB might offer higher highs from the mid lane, I think Solram offers a better floor and more consistency. She definitely Had a very solid split throughout Rivals League. EV just just narrowly missing out playoffs. Was right up there with the best of them.
Yeah, couldn't have said it any better than that. We'll see if Solram comes back for the next split. I mean, playoffs or not, ending number one in your role for the Runback has to feel good.
Indeed.
Carry.
Bottom lane. Zodex. We don't have e-subs, but Zodex did play 2 games. The Yasuo left a little bit to be desired. Did have a better game. Games 2 and 3. It wasn't enough to get them any higher than 6, but looked really good on that MF 8-3 and 11. The Syndra started off really good in lane. That Syndra Lux combo into the Varus Alistar, and then it outside of lane quickly lost its luster.
Yeah, I mean three very different champs were played.
Yeah.
One of them looked good. That paired with this being your only week. Unfortunately, gonna stick at 6, but at least I think the only e-sub to ever make the list. So there you go.
Yeah, true. You can put that on your Discord. At 5. Gonna be stank. Played the Aphelios top and then played the Lee Sin bottom. So we thought, hey, he played an 80 carry, and then he also played 1 game in the role. So slightly better. Like the Syndra for Zodex. The Lee Sin in lane actually didn't look horrible. The Lee Sin Taric combo. It looked awful out of lane, but at least he had some fun for like 10 minutes. And then on the Aphelios in game 1 was a big reason why that game went so long. Had a couple of, base defenses that were really nice. Went 7-5-1 on the main. Just the rest of RAR was struggling that game.
Yeah, there were points where I was like, did the rest of the team tell Stank that they're not trying to win? Because he was like doing his mechanical magic on the Aphelios. But
yeah,
we'll see if the Stank Aphelios makes its playoff debut or not.
He actually ended with the most gold of any player that game, which is kind of funny. Ferdy at 4. Ferdy, like Solram, probably the most consistent player among 80 carries. Didn't really get it going against the Patriots. The game 1 loss went 1-1 and 2. Wasn't a really huge factor on the Xayah. And the win popped off 7-2 and 5, and then brought out the Annihilated game 3. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. Part of it was, Triumphant was dealing with that disconnect issue. Regardless, though, I don't know if that would have changed the outcome just with the way that the game was going. If you told me before this season Ferdy would end outside the top 3, I wouldn't have believed you, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, I think carry was one of the roles where the top 3 was very tough to crack, and even though if you're out of the top 3, if you're in that 4 spot, it still kind of feels like you're in that group, just because a lot of the time the 5th and 6th spot, there's a pretty big gap between 4th and 5th. Now we know Ferdy's a solid player. Unfortunately, didn't make playoffs, but 4th, it's like 3rd and a half. It's like almost tied for 3rd. That's my answer.
There you go. Always the optimist.
Mm-hmm.
At 3, who do we got?
Riley Sauce 21. A lot of people seem to not like it when we don't have Riley Sauce at number 1 when you're on a team that's undefeated. It's bot lane can sometimes get skewed as the lines between is the AD carry good, is the support good, is it both of them, get blurred a lot of the times. But no, Riley Sauce, solid player. Multiple solid weeks. This week, of course, was kind of a weird one. Had to show us they can play the Aphelios, or not the Aphelios, Callista. Same thing, right? Same champ.
Yeah, same champ.
Show us that he had some hands. Game 2, I mean, still played decent game 2. It's just didn't fall for their team, but no, gonna slot in at 3rd. I guess we'll we'll probably have to speed it up a little bit as we got about 12 minutes, but Riley looked good.
2 gonna be the Patriots carry intelligence, I believe, unless I'm totally mistaken. Okay, it is Eli. Eli had a very, very, very nice performance. Probably the best series that he's had in Rivals League. Um, went well. I mean, Ash was it was a quiet game, 1-0-6. That game was very slow for both teams. Ended up getting that win. On the MF, ended up losing but popped off, and then game 3, 12-1-5 on the Ezreal. Uh, it's it any other week, that performance across 3 games probably gets you number 1. Unfortunately for him, Aurora was up to their shenanigans, and the player that yet to be named on this list had a very, very nice series because of it.
Yeah, Eli. I think Eli's Ezreal game 3 was, I mean, one of, if not the reason that they won that game 3
Mm-hmm.
and made playoffs. So that's why they slotted into 2, and then number 1's gonna be Dante's Inferno from Shinobi.
Didn't I once in that series? 7-0-17 on the Senna, 13-0-4 on the Jinx. Really likes those hyperscalers, hyper carries. And when they do well, Inferno's usually popping off with crazy KDAs, crazy damage numbers. When Shinobi doesn't do well, it's a combination of Millie Bobby Brown having a tough performance and then all the focus getting put on Inferno. So if both of those players can perform well tonight, um, kind of contribute equally to their team, then Inferno should have enough room, should have enough wiggle space in team fights to do what he does. So we'll have to see.
Concur. Sport, most important role, some would say. We
Some would say.
have Adrian Legitness making their debut. I don't know. I don't think they've played
Yes,
before.
I believe so.
Did they play support both games?
Yep, they played support both games.
Yeah, the Swain. I mean, like with most of our people, this last week was just kind of a "what am I watching" type situation. It's kind of tough to play the Tark when you have Elise in. It looked like solid for like the first few levels.
I mean, it's a fun solo queue bot lane, but
Maybe not in a
comp.
coordinated 5.
Yeah, it's
So,
tough.
just a tough week overall for our support was no exception.
Number 5. I don't actually remember. Oh, it is Blackout. Yeah, Blackout. It's tough when you have to lane with somebody that, to my knowledge, probably don't have a lot of experience with. I can't, confirm nor deny that's the case. It just seemed like, it they weren't always on the same page. Looked really good, like I said, on the Lux with that Syndra pairing. Actually had a really nice game on the Maokai as well. I remember that there was one play where he flashes over the wall to peel for his carry. So, had probably their best performance as a player in Rivals League. Unfortunately for them, it's still just a 5th place finish.
Feels better than 6th. And
Feels
that's all
better
that
than
matters.
6th. It's true. You want to take this one?
Yeah, triumphant. It's tough. Obviously, we have to go off what actually happened. And like stats is some part of it, and game results and all that fun stuff. So, triumphant at 4 in a vacuum feels bad because I feel like triumphant is actually one of the best supports. Especially, I mean, one of the best supports that I've played against, and I've played a decent amount of competitive. But in Rivals League, EV did not have the best split overall. A bunch of almosts. I think maybe could have been a spot or 2 higher, but I'm so anti at least at our elo blind picking Nautilus. I think they first like B1
Yeah,
Nautilus. Not saying that's like the sole reason they lost by any means, but it's just so easy to counter in my opinion. It's easy to take away that play making ability like late into the game. So
Yep.
didn't love that one. Other than that, still looked solid. Still 4th doesn't feel too bad. But that's one of the reasons I think not in the top 3 this last week.
Into the top 3, we do go, and it's going to be Sapphire Gem at 3. Sapphire Gem probably the highest they've been ranked. Big reason why is, uh, you know, Dante's Inferno practically untouched, and the Janna looked really good, 1-1 and 25, and then even on the Lulu as well, died a couple more times than their team, but if your support's the only one dying, then you're playing the role right. Um, so I think Sapphire Gem probably had her best series. I'm curious to see how their matchup against Aurora goes. Again, the rematch, so to speak. I don't know who will actually be playing for either side, but really good performance.
Yeah.
DK at 2.
DK at 2. I mean, good series has been seemingly improving throughout the split every week. I liked the Rel answer into Nautilus. I kind of spoke on that one already.
Yep.
Another Janna pick. So we saw two Jannas this last week.
Yep.
I'm not the biggest Janna fan, but that's okay. And then a solid game on the Tark. I think didn't die maybe.
Yep.
So no, good good week to take the number 2 spot, but that must mean that number 1, I think once again, for
Yeah.
similar to most weeks, is going to be
Rogue
Rogue Gorilla.
Gorilla. Yep. Rogue Gorilla. A big part of their team's success, sets up a lot of the plays that Kaden, that Storm, that Iplock, and Riley Sauce make. One of the better laning supports as well, in my opinion. Definitely deserving at number 1. We're gonna run straight through the team rankings because, for the most part, it kind of ended up being how the actual standings played out for the most part.
Close-ish. I mean,
Uh,
standing wise, 2 through 4. I mean, they're tied, right? It was the whole circle
yeah,
effect. So obviously, it doesn't exactly match the standings, which may or may not make people happy or not. But this is not the standings. This was kind of our power rankings. I think probably even for us, 2 through 4 are obviously still pretty close. I don't think 1 was very questionable. You can't question a team that didn't drop
yeah,
a match. So this is kind of how we see the teams. But I
yeah.
don't know.
I think the Patriots ramped up as the season went on. Roar. If I was more confident who was playing each week, might have been number 2. But I think as it stands right now, Patriots, in my opinion, deserving of 2. Shinobi kind of limped into playoffs, so to speak. Obviously, they ended up on a high against a RAR team that was kind of forfunning it, but for a good middle portion of that season, a good chunk of it, they were struggling to kind of regain their footing. They found it. They come in. They're actually going to be the 3 seed. So who knows what happens? You made it into playoffs. Now you could throw out what happened in the regular season out the window and just focus on the here and now. But yeah, I think for the most part these are pretty solid.
Yeah. And in the last 5 minutes that we have, before we get to our predictions, just a little sneak peek teaser. I'm gonna throw in there. So we are doing like the award show and whatnot next week before finals. The little teaser I can give you is that surprisingly enough, so it was community vote mixed with our vote, so it wasn't just like us deciding. So everybody had the opportunity to vote. Almost 30 people participated and whatnot. All 5 all-stars are from different teams. So there are no teams with 2 all-stars on it. I have to choose my words carefully. I don't want to accidentally say something. So, and then on top of that, the MVP of the league is not an all-star. And that's not all-stars MVP. There's different ways to define it. Obviously, everybody could have made their own definition. Usually, all-stars are essentially the best player in the role. MVP is usually the most valuable player, to the team and whatnot. So that gives you a little bit to think about. We'll see, but it is interesting, and I kind of like the fact that we had 6 teams, and 5 of those teams ended up with 1 all-star player. So
Yeah. I think it'll be fun to see everybody's reactions. You're definitely gonna want to be a part of that. That'll be happening before finals next week on Sunday. Kind of, it won't be in place of Rivals Run Back. It'll be another Rivals Run Back episode, but it'll kind of just be our laid back award show. We're in the semifinals though, so now we're gonna talk about the meat of the broadcast, starting with our streamed matchup. It's going to be Dignawash taking on the Patriots. I took the liberty of changing the Patriots roster, as Sight in his one of his interviews kind of said this is kind of what they're planning on running. So on paper, actually really close, only 3 points difference between these two teams. Um, we saw them go off head to head in week one. It wasn't particularly close, but I think Patriots have ramped up. However, I'm predicting 3-1 Dignawash. I think Patriots win like a game two or three. Um, as the series gets into the 4 and 5, the champion pool difference does become an issue for some players, and Dignawash benefits because of it.
Yeah. I will not be surprised at all if you are 100% correct. But I gotta make it a little spicy.
Yeah,
I gotta try to pass you.
yeah.
And I
One
don't
point.
think it's impossible for
Okay.
if it goes to 5 games that Patriots take it out. And
I feel
so
like if I feel like if the Patriots win, it'll definitely be like a 3-2, grinded out. Like Dignawash kind of gets a little nervous.
yeah, so if Dig comes out and just stomps 3-0, I won't be the most surprised. But if Patriots can kind of pop them in the mouth as Dignawash is looking towards finals already, then Patriots could kind of sneak attack them there. So I don't know. Hey, we'll see. I'm trying to win
We'll
out here.
see. We'll see. I could definitely see it going either way. Second semifinals match, which probably has already begun. It's gonna be Shinobi taking on RAR. Shinobi and RAR, we got to see them match up the last week of the regular season. I don't think it'll be an exact rematch. I think different players for RAR will be suiting up, but who knows? Maybe it will be. In which case, I'm pretty sure both our predictions are gonna suffer. CB, start us off.
Yeah, obviously it's just like a toss up on who's actually playing for RAR. We're both pretty confident that Shinobi's going to have their starting roster. They've had a few like subs here and there, but hopefully their starting roster will be there. Um, it's tough because I don't know who's going to be playing for RAR, but Shinobi has had some time to kind of collect their thoughts as their second half of the season wasn't particularly the best. But I still believe they have one of the best players in the league at 80 carry and still a solid team top to bottom uh, for them. So I'm gonna go 3-1.
So Shinobi, because I think RAR might pull some shenanigans. Now, who knows? Maybe they mix and match as the series progresses. Different roles, different players, different lanes. Going 3-2 though. I feel like with RAR shenanigans, I think they could pick up a couple wins, but ultimately, the team that has the more consistent starting lineup prevails. They've had a lot more games together, and should be a fun series nonetheless. You'll have to tune in on Tuesday to catch the results of that one. That's it for Rivals Runback, I believe. Um, Anything I'm missing here, CB?
That's it. I think the teams are hopefully probably waiting for us to hop in there. So if you wanna
Yep.
go intermission for a couple minutes as we load in.
Yep, let's do that. When we are back, we will be into the game one draft between Dignawash and the Patriots semifinals action starting soon.